¿Qué tal, qué tal? ¿Todo suena muy bien?
Let's sing a song.
Ah, no está en
Yeah, you don't need a microphone here. It's really...
No.
What's going on?
Que no se abre el app.
But you saw this
Sí,
before.
¿quién me llama?
Yeah, it does work.
¿Qué?
La cosa es que a mí me suena que aquí no se podían poner
But the
PowerPoints.
whole thing is in the app. is not
Medialo.
¿Estás seguro de que aquí se podía poner?
No, eso lo hemos probado antes con Julián.
Ahí va, ¿no?
He,
Sí.
Julian said I had to open it and then press F5 and then it would be like on full screen. And
Yeah,
then
but
it would
first we put it on the right, yes. Llamo Julián.
Uno, dos. Igual más bajito o... Bueno, no sé cómo lo... Hola, uno, dos.
Sí, pero se supone que la persona que está hablando
Los
aquí no está
micrófonos.
pegada, está hablando desde aquí, porque
Vale,
está, la verdad,
Un,
¿no?
dos,
Estás
los
relajadamente
micrófonos.
hablando desde aquí, te mueves. ¿No?
Diciendo 1, 2,
Hola.
3, 4.
Uno, dos, los micrófonos. Dos, tres, los micrófonos. Que... Tío, me lo estoy rayando con esto.
So we have this one
¿Qué está pasando?
in the
Trying
middle.
to start LibreOffice.
And we pass it.
Opening that.
Y te
Then
a ver
to-
este.
Yes, that's also what
Este
I
es para el
tried, but it
público.
didn't work.
El público.
Yes, still waiting. Okay, no.
Acá está.
Is there a way to open it?
Oh, here.
I think I know what went wrong. He said that I had to send it as a PDF.
Yeah. Do you have it in PDF?
No, so then I have to go and put it in PDF first.
You can use my computer if you want.
Yeah, if it's an Apple. I have an Apple. If that's not,
No, I don't have an Apple. But
that's
you
not a
can
problem, right?
send it by PDF if it's easier. If not, we can just use my
Okay.
computer
So
here.
then I
¿Hablo?
need to-
¿Hola? ¿Está bien? ¿Guapos?
Y a Laura, Carmen. Laura. Sí, os conocéis también, ¿no? Sí. Y bueno, vosotros
Creo que habrá que equilibrar la mesa. Como están ellos dos aquí juntos,
pero bueno, tenemos que...
estamos yendo todos en una...
Sí, yo tampoco me lo digo el día, porque tú me dijiste que no podías ir. Por eso, vosotros me dijeron que no da igual. Porque la gente no comía, hoy no está bien. No, pues está Javier y ya está. Bueno, pues nada, lo mejor es que estés tú. Entonces nada, pues... Sí, no, bueno, ella presenta un poquito lo que es su proyecto. Yo presento primero, digo hola, tal, no sé qué. Luego le paso la palabra a ella y ella va a hacer una mini presentación y la presentación preparada y de su proyecto. Y luego empezamos la discusión. Entonces, por ejemplo, tú te sientas por aquí. Ella, tú, you want to sit here? You in the middle? Or,
Sí,
I don't know.
yes.
You here, and you?
Yo allí.
No, tú aquí, tú aquí. Tú aquí. Y yo en realidad yo presento, pero puedo presentar y luego sentarme. Claro, en otro lado, quiero decir.
Me puedo sentar
Yo presento, ¿cómo?
Es que si me siento aquí así veo la vista.
Nah, tú tienes que estar de frente, que tú vas a ver, todo el mundo quiere ver. Todo el mundo quiere ver. Entonces, a ver, eso no es una abogada, le digo a Julián algo, porque esto es, o sea, ha subido esta mañana, hemos visto con Julián una PPT que presenta, bueno, una serie de 6 PPT, aunque sea LibreOffice, ¿no? Y nada, ya no se habla.
PDF.
No sé, y ahora no se habla, pues lo hemos visto hace un rato esta mañana, no sé, es una chorrada. Increíble. ¿No? Está aprobada y, ¿no? You tried that.
Yes, so now we're putting it into...
LibreOffice is not working.
In this condition, but we tried this morning, no?
So you can export it to PDF.
Yes.
I can either export it to PDF or use it we use my computer.
And if not, if you don't like it, you prefer the...
No, this is, I think the layout is stayed the same.
have to finish with this PPT monopoly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know where it is.
Change it for PDF monopoly.
PDF is not great format either, you know that.
Bueno, entonces vamos a hacer eso. ¿Cómo nos vamos a sentar? ¿Tú, Ana? You feel comfortable in the middle? Yes. Okay. So I would like, when I make the presentation, I may be here, but someone may change me and I go here and then you want to come here, no? Or you? Because I'm not going to be talking. para aquí. Ahí Javier, por ejemplo, y aquí.
Estás mirando a mí como que tienes el centro de
Sí, pues nada. Entonces, pero hay un momento en que yo me siento, por ejemplo, tal y luego te voy a cambiar, ¿vale? Porque yo en un momento tengo que sentarme porque voy a medio leer, entonces quiero estar sentada. Y...
¿Tú me quieres sentar con eso? Yo hago lo que tú me digas. ¿Sí?
Sí, está bien.
Por ejemplo.
Y bueno, yo entonces desde aquí yo me siento donde está.
El tema es que estar sentado aquí con los focos de frente es más incómodo.
Por eso. Entonces vamos a poner un poco de agüita. A ver, agua, chicos. Sí.
Creo que será.
Yes. ¿Cómo?
Let's go.
It's on.
Yeah.
Spelling is correct, right? This is correct, right? I didn't make a typo.
Yeah, it's good.
It would be stupid.
Está cerrado
I don't know how to get rid of this. Yeah.
Entonces yo voy a...
Qué bonito, ya son con vídeo. ¿Quién las ha hecho? Los de
Yo
traficantes.
necesito un micro para...
Lo que ponen los traficantes no ponen en sus libros en la
Yo
copia.
necesito un micro para la presentación, entonces... Ese mismo. No, lo pasamos, lo ponemos. Está muy alto, ¿no? No, me cojo este, cojo este mejor. Lo voy a leer todo porque luego...
¿Habéis tuiteado el
Sí.
Es que yo ya Twitter hemos visto todo.
Así, ¿no? Se has pasado total, ¿no? Entonces, vamos a ver si está todo en marcha. Mira, tenemos público. Avante, avante. No, estos vienen a enseñar algo. Estos no son nuestro público, creo. ¿Sí? Bueno, pues vamos a empezar. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Soy Sonia Díez, responsable del programa de Residencias de Media Prado, que si no lo digo ahora siempre se me olvida. Bueno, es para mí un placer presentar esta mesa redonda en torno al tema de los comunes, que va a moderar Anna Kooi. Y bueno, Anna es una estudiante de la Universidad de Ámsterdam con formación en artes escénicas y lingüística. Ha creado con un grupo de estudiantes de esta universidad Commoning UvA, que es una plataforma que quiere replantear la universidad como un común y convertirla en un laboratorio para la creación colaborativa, gestionado de manera horizontal para poder contrarrestar la privatización de la educación universitaria. Anna es residente en Media Lab gracias a la colaboración que mantenemos con la European Culture Foundation y su programa de becas de investigación y desarrollo de proyectos. Cuando seleccioné el proyecto de Anna, siempre me pareció que pensé en lo muchísimo que podía aportar todo lo que es el laboratorio del Procomún a la experiencia con todo ese conocimiento atesorado en estos 10 años de laboratorio, a esta nueva generación del Procomún llena de energía, pues para seguir peleando en la defensa y la difusión de los comunes. Entonces voy a leer un poco las biografías de cada uno de los participantes. Tengo aquí a mi izquierda a Javier de la Cueva, que es abogado experto en propiedad intelectual y doctor en filosofía. Es profesor asociado en la Facultad de Filosofía de la Universidad Complutense de Madrid y en la Universidad del Instituto de Empresa. Además, en la actualidad se dedica a programar diversos proyectos tecnológicos, a impartir conferencias y a escribir obras sobre su especialización. Y bueno, él ha sido uno de los más activos miembros del laboratorio del Procomún desde sus inicios en 2007. Luego tenemos allí, en aquella esquina, a Frank Queró, que es colaborador de Media Lab desde hace 3 años. Codirige el grupo de microscopía atómica y es cofundador y presidente de la asociación Open Lab Madrid. También posee 2 años de experiencia en laboratorio de ingeniería de tejidos, en el Departamento de Biomedicina Epitelial del CIEMAT, en el área de medicina regenerativa. A su lado está Laura Armero, que es cofundadora y vicepresidenta de Open Lab Madrid también. Actualmente estudia farmacia en la Universidad Complutense de Madrid con una especialización en sanitaria. Y bueno, explicar qué es el Open Lab Madrid, que es una organización que busca hacer la biotecnología y sus herramientas de innovación accesibles a la ciudadanía, así como mejorar el modelo educativo de las carreras universitarias en ciencias de la vida y ciencias de la salud. Actualmente el Open Lab Madrid coordina la actividad de biología Do It Yourself a través de la preparación de talleres y de la coordinación y montaje del primer laboratorio de prototipado biológico público de Madrid. Y luego tenemos a Antonio Fornés, al lado a la izquierda de Ana, Antonio Tenorio Fornés, que es desarrollador de software libre e investigador. Actualmente realiza una tesis doctoral y trabaja en el proyecto Peer-to-Peer Models. El objetivo de su investigación es el desarrollo de herramientas descentralizadas de gobernanza para las comunidades de producción de bienes comunes entre pares. Anteriormente trabajó para el proyecto Peer-to-Peer Value, desarrollando herramientas descentralizadas de colaboración para estas comunidades. Bueno, entonces quiero agradeceros a todos vuestra generosa y desinteresada participación en esta mesa redonda y también a todos los participantes del laboratorio Común que han tenido, como vosotros, largas entrevistas con Ana y bueno, que no han podido venir pues porque estamos en la operación salida de Semana Santa. Así está esto tan tranquilito. Entonces, estas personas son Alberto Corsín, Tiscar Lara, Floren Cabello, que la invitó a La Invisible en Málaga, luego también Adolfo Estaleya, Ana Méndez y otras personas del entorno de Media Lab como María Sefidari, Javier Rivera, Bernardo Gutiérrez. También, bueno, quiero agradecer todo su apoyo al grandísimo Antonio Lafuente, que no ha podido venir porque está de viaje, y bueno, por todo su apoyo al laboratorio y a Media Lab en general. Y por último también quisiera anunciaros que todas las entrevistas han sido grabadas, tanto en vídeo y algunas en audio, y vamos a colgar toda esta documentación en la página web de Media Lab para que, bueno, también va a hacer transcripciones y resúmenes y pues todo esto, cuando tenga tiempo tendremos acceso también a toda la documentación, no solo de esta mesa redonda, sino también de lo que se ha grabado en las entrevistas. Pues nada, sin más, paso la palabra a Anna Kooi, que va a hacer una pequeña presentación antes de iniciar la mesa redonda. ¿Tú vas ahí?
So, I'm very sorry that we have to speak English tonight because, as I understand, almost everybody here speaks Spanish fluently, apart from me. So, apologies for the inconvenience. I'm very happy that you are here tonight. First of all, thank you, Sonia, for the introduction. And second of all, a big thanks to Media Lab, which has been a wonderful learning environment for me over the past 3 weeks. Thanks to the ECF, European Culture Foundation, for the wonderful opportunity they're providing us with and the support. And a big thanks to my fellow commoners at home in Amsterdam. Without you, I could never have done this, so I owe you. Before we start with the roundtable, I think it's a good idea to briefly present our initiative, Commoning UvA, as well as give you some historical and socio-political context around the initiative. Also, I will give you a brief overview of my research project here in Media Lab, which I've been doing over the past 3 weeks. So, for starters, Commoning UvA is short for Commoning the University of Amsterdam. In short, we would define ourselves as an interdisciplinary activist commons, studying the evolution of discourses at the UvA and redefining the university as a commons. To clarify the relevance of this project, I will give you a situated account of the historical context within which this initiative was born. At the University of Amsterdam, we have a history of student and staff protest and occupations. The first occupation of the Maagdenhuis, which is the central administrative building of the University of Amsterdam, as well as the seat of the board, took place in 1969. On the 16th of May, students and staff occupied the building, which is situated in the center of Amsterdam. It's a beautiful old building. And they stayed there for 5 days. The reason for this occupation was the fact that students were demanding higher levels of democracy at the university. After before I tell you about the eviction, I will tell you something about this picture. What they did is they built a bridge between the Maagdenhuis and the Lithuanian church, which was across the street. And this was the only way to enter or leave the building during the occupation. So you can see that people were literally risking their lives to enter or leave this occupied building. This picture is to give you an impression of what it looked like on the inside. So people were sleeping here, eating, discussing, etc. And ultimately, after 5 days, they were evicted by the local police force. However, the occupation turned out to be quite successful because levels of democracy were highly improved at the University of Amsterdam. But over the decades, the levels of democracy declined and declined and declined. Between 1969 and 2014, there were 10 more occupations of the Maagdenhuis. These are all less well known than the first one, and they weren't as impactful as the first one as well, not by far. Then, in November 2014, the Dean of the Faculty of the Humanities announced gigantic financial budget cuts. These budget cuts were due to a lack of students and obviously financial problems. Only in the next year it would mean that there would have to be 4 million euros cut back from the budget of the Faculty of the Humanities. They were speaking about two options for the future of the faculty. One was the liberal arts and sciences model, which was already applied in the university colleges. And the other one was to create bachelor schools, as they're called, around different disciplines. This would also mean that small educational programs, which had few students, such as Scandinavian and New Greek language and culture, would disappear altogether. Luckily, in our opinion, students went to the streets and protested on a large scale. There were marches, as you can see here on this picture. I myself also participated in this march, as well as the other members of Commoning UvA. Unfortunately, their voices were not being taken seriously. So in February, 25th of February to be exact, 2015, the activism culminated in the 12th occupation of the Maagdenhuis. One of the main demands of the students and staff who occupied the building was the resignation of the board. Louise Gunning, the chairwoman of the board, she actually came to the Maagdenhuis when it was just being occupied, and she asked the students to leave because this was our Maagdenhuis, she said, which was of course a very painful remark. Contrary to previous occupations, this time the building functioned as an open cultural space for collaborative learning. Here you can see where people were sleeping on the floor, making music. But there was also a vibrant cultural program. There were lectures, such as this one by Jacques Rancière, workshops, concerts, local politicians visited the building. So it really was a self-managed space for co-creation and direct democracy. Here on the signs you can see Fair Culture No More and Direct Democracy. This is one of the assemblies that was being held. So the doors of the building were open at all times, which I think is very important to stress. The discourse thus became visibly more politically aware also in the months after the occupation. Multiple networks of students and staff have self-organized into what could be called commons. After 6 weeks, the building was evicted by the local police force, just as had happened in the 1969 occupation. 1 week after the eviction, the chairwoman of the board, Louise Gunning, resigned. Also, several commissions were created, such as the Commission on Decentralization and Democratization. They were mandated of researching alternative the governance models for the university. In the end, they proposed 4 models. Oh, so this is the resignation, Louise Gunning. 4 models were being proposed in the end for the future governance of the university. A yellow model, a blue model, a red model, and a green model. The green model, or the self-organized university model, was very closely connected to the discourse of the commons. At the end of 2016, a semi-binding referendum was held. This was a university-wide referendum, and when the results came out, we saw that the faculties for the humanities and the social sciences were leaning strongly towards the self-organizing university, which also legitimizes our work as Commoning UvA. So, at the start of 2016, we came together for the first time and we asked ourselves, well, two questions. Maybe the first question was, what do we have to do to avoid the need for yet another occupation of the Maagdenhuis? And then, of course, the second obvious question, who owns our university? So, we as a Commons want to co-create a new governance structure in the capillaries of and as an umbrella for the self-organizing university. We want to create a governance structure that is based on mapping and mobilizing knowledge, commons vocabulary and capacities for commoning practices at the university. So I will read these quotes for you. We redefine the university as a commons, we counteract the privatization of higher education and the enclosure of knowledge, we foster commoning initiatives within the university, we try to be an open and inclusive space for experimentation with alternative knowledge production, and we aim to transform the governance structure of the university into a horizontally governed space for co-creation. So, this transformation, as we see it, takes place on three levels. There's a decentral level, which is where we foster micro-local commoning practices in education and research fields. On the central level, we strengthen knowledge and commoning practices on the central level, working with democratic bodies such as the Central Student Council. And on the third level, we work on building a parallel infrastructure. We create new decentralized governance bodies that operate as commons. For example, by working with a new style Senate or by creating a digital common space. These are all plans, they are not all being carried out yet. In all of these levels, discourse formation, or discourse transformation, as we like to think of it, is an integral part of this transformative process. Raising awareness about the commons by integrating the commons vocabulary at the university is crucial to everything we do. So then, what do we do, like in a tangible way? We started by organizing an interview series that were reflecting on the occupation. So we interviewed professors, city residents, students, staff. Then in November 2016, we organized a working conference thinking about designing the future of the university by making use of the future search model. We organized a lecture and workshop series called The 13th Occupation, which was an ironic title. We give trainings on faculty and central levels to, for example, the Student Council to teach them how to decentralize themselves and to integrate the commons discourse into their practices. We organize weekly reading groups to which everybody can attend. And we work on alternative knowledge production by writing articles, publishing transcripts, and so forth. Show you some pictures to give you a visual image. This was the working conference that we organized. We made a very gigantic timeline on the windows of the building. This was organized in Voxpop, which is the creative space of the Faculty of the Humanities. And we let people write down their history on a personal level, on a local level, on a global level, and to see them, make them see how all these histories are interconnected in order to create a common history or shared sense of history. We mapped all the trends at the university, we put them on the floor, we categorized them in order to think of alternative solutions. These are pictures of our lectures, and we also had dinner together. So you have an image. Recently we've started with a weekly reading group in which we explore commons classics such as Elinor Ostrom or Tine de Moor, but we also try to unravel more obscure texts like Space of Commoning or the Undercommons, or investigate Deleuze's Rhizomes or Hart and Negri's Multitude. Another plan that we are working on is a digital mapping tool and a virtual learning space for the University of Amsterdam, in which all the power structures, financial flows, activist groups can be visualized and located and see in relation to each other. So, I was invited by the ECF to come here for residency for 3 weeks, and I have been working on this objective, studying, mapping and exchanging inspirational methodologies for discourse formation around the commons. My main question in this process was, what can we learn from each other's vocabularies, aesthetics, channels and strategies of communication? So language, both vocal language and visual language, as well as communication, were my two main focuses. So I've done what you could call a comparative case study of the practices of discourse formation at the laboratorio de común and Commoning UvA, so ourselves. And my method was, as Sonia already touched upon, in-depth audiovisual interviews with initiators, participants, and facilitators, of which many of them are here today, which is wonderful. I visited self-managed spaces in Madrid and in Malaga. I participated in demonstrations against, I think, anti-commons values and privatization of our commons. And tonight, I also consider part of the research project, the roundtable discussion on the topic of translatability. So, translating the commons. Why did I choose this topic for tonight? Well, being here in Madrid and studying the commons discourse in Media Lab and in the laboratorio de común made me wonder. All commons initiatives are recognizable as commons, despite their sometimes profound different approaches, resources, community sizes, etc. But what do they share? And then what do the commons in Amsterdam share with the commons initiatives here in Madrid? What are the shared denominators? Can we really know if these exist and what they are? I would like to go beyond the 8 shared characteristics that Eleanor Ostrom formulated tonight and ask the question of translatability. The global discourse on the commons implicates a certain degree of synchronicity between all these local different commons practices. But to what extent are commons shaped by local or context-specific factors? And to what extent do they tend to ultimately take similar shapes? What does it mean to say that all commons share a certain set of characteristics? This question is also relevant for my residency here in a direct way. How am I going to take these experiences, which are situated in the specific social, political, and cultural context of Madrid, and translate them to our commons at home? How can we understand each other across cultures and generations to emulate our local commoning practices by studying and participating in commoning practices elsewhere? So these are my thoughts. I will join you now at the table. So I think it might be, I've already asked many questions just now during my little presentation, but I think it might be useful to start with this question. To what extent are commons defined by situated factors? Or, on the other hand, do commoning processes converge to a specific form or shape? May I invite one of my fellow colleagues here tonight to elaborate on this topic?
So the question is how the commons are defined, like in a situated manner, right? And I think it's one of the main characteristics of commons that the communities around them self-defines their commons, their rules. So probably yes, commons are situated experiences, and depending on where they are or what they are and the community around, they may have different shapes. I don't know if this opens the table or...
Would you like to...
Well, I think that when Eleanor Ostrom made her research, in the end what she did was an exercise of comparative literature. Mm-hmm. So what she did was, she took what did the other authors speak about the commons or think about the commons, and she was just facing a problem of the accessibility in documentation. That is to say, when people wanted to share information due to, well, they were scholars, so they solidified this information in papers, and these papers wanted to be shared by the rest of the people. There were certain sets of accessibility items all these scholars wanted to face. So in the end, what she did is she introduced, well, it wasn't only she, it was this paper with Hess, And, well, in the end, they arrived to a common set of accessible, we could say, ways, okay, or accessible shapes of to the information. So in the end, that means, I think, two things. First of all, I think that the methodology that they two used is absolutely valid. And second, what that means is that in order to analyze a commons, we always have to analyze what are the legal possibilities to access and to manage the commons. So it's going to be a commons because there is some kind of rules, we are going to say customary rules, but there's also some kind of rules which are legal rules that are going to shape how we are going to be able to access the information. Okay, this is absolutely clear with scholar production. And I think that way of understanding how to approach to where we are is still valid. So that is to say, okay, what do we understand by a commons here in Spain, or what do we understand by a commons in Netherlands? Okay, perfect, yes, but what are the rules to access there? Okay, this last week what we had is this announcement made by the European Commission where they were they were settling this open science program in Europe. And it's a very, very nice paper because in the end it's a paper of a working paper. And it's a staff, and it's that way it's known. It's the staff working, so in the end it's a set of rules on how to produce certain kind of innovations or certain kind of understandings. I recommend the reading of this paper, not because if it is, even though it's got somehow an informatic background, because in the end what it is saying is that the archives that we have to build, that is to say the commons that we have to build, have to follow certain rules, and they can be extracted from this paper, which I think that it's also quite interesting. And I think that they match perfectly with the analysis that were made by Ostrom and Hess.
So you would agree with them that all commoning projects share 8 characteristics?
Yeah, I do agree with Ostrom and Hess when they said so. So I say yes, and this was not. It's not my idea. It was their idea. Mm-hmm. I think.
Any other thoughts on this?
We only can talk about our experience in open science or something like this because we are part of open science movement in Europe. So I think one of the problems is the legal rules of, there are like the legal rules of Spain, the legal rules of Europe, and I don't know, the problem that we face is that these legal rules ask for some institution to manage the resources. So the problem is that our idea for project is to get the science out of institutions, but all the legal rules want institution, not only universities, but science centers or something like this to manage all the resources. And the problem is how we can manage this the money or all the resources in a communitary way. Always need an institution or something or someone to manage this. And the point is who is going to, speak. Medela Prado is a part of Tito programs, and the Tito's programs have make a change in this way because they change the institution who manage these resources from the universities and the scientific centers to a public centers. Mm-hmm. But it's an institution too, it's the people who are managing.
Yeah. So I think commons experiences exist in the reality, and whether it is a technical reality, well, it is a technical reality, a legal reality, but also commons challenge this reality by, for instance, saying, okay, it's the authors and the viewers who create the value in scientific publication. Why are publishers taking most of the profit? Mm-hmm. So there is a tension between the local rules that the community gives themselves and what are the rules that states impose to these communities. And successful commons usually manage to have their own rules and not the rules that others impose to them. And of course there are tensions, and sometimes the commons experiences are more powerful and they gain some autonomy, and other times there are really strong forces that keeps the commons from taking their own rules and keeps them, for instance, proprietary behind paywalls or behind rules that doesn't benefit science, if we're speaking about that, but benefits publishers or institutions. And
I have a question, because this is true when you are talking about commons like internet or something like this, but when you are talking about commons that are regulated, hard regulated, like I don't know the woods or something like this, you know, commons that are hard regulated by the government, you can make your own rules. You can't make your own rules, you know. You must adapt.
There is a struggle. You can say, okay, we are making our own rules, and your rules don't apply here. And of course, you may end in prison, or the government may say, okay, you are managing this in a clever way, I will let you manage your things. So there is a tension, of course, and there are consequences of people that challenge these rules, and yeah.
You disagree, or?
The problem is, I don't know, what are the legal mechanism to start a conversation with the people who own the power to manage the rules actually, and change this. I don't know if in Netherlands have any way, or here in Spain we are starting to get new ways. You know, here in Madrid we have with the new government we have new ways to democratize the commons, but I don't know what channels are to talk with the people who own this power. This is I think this is the first. Es que me explico en inglés. Pero que la primera razón, lo primero que necesitamos es primero ver los canales que existen para hablar con la gente que actualmente tiene el poder de regular estos commons, porque con cosas como internet no es tan necesario porque no hay tanta regulación, pero con cosas como bosques o yo qué sé, conocimiento en las universidades está muy regulado. Perdón, por el...
So then the freedom to create your own rules is very limited.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the main point.
Well, we have a legal expert at the table. So.
Excuse me. Well, I think that you came into, you put on the table two things that are very, very important. First of all, the matter of governance, which is absolutely a core point. And the second, what happens when there are certain rules. But I would like also to pose a question of, it's not only the rules that are there exist to regulate the commons, but all the side rules that have side effects which are very, very important for the commons, for example. Okay, so going to the governance, we have very, very good examples of how the governance could be made. For example, Dublin Core project, which is leading the world with the categories for bibliography or for libraries. Well, it's a commons, and it has something that is absolutely perfect, which is, there is this technical way of understanding how should we create categories, and these are the ones that we are going to use for making the archives of the world, which is, I think, very, very good example. But for example, the Internet Engineering Task Force is also a very, very good example of how they created this regulation in order, how do we create ourselves as, how do we institutionalize ourselves? So in the end, institution is not only they, but it's also us. Because when you are regulating a commons, you are also making some kind of institutions. So this way of thinking about institutions, I think that we have to adhere to the situation that we are also people who are participating in the institutionalization. That's it, institutionalization of the commons. And this doesn't mean that's going to work worse or not. I think that Dublin Core is a very, very good example on how things can be very well done. So semantic web, when we arrive to certain principle of semantic web, the governance models that we have there create good examples. Okay, second about the participation, because I think that governance is also very related with participation. What happens with participation? Okay, we've got an institution, but this institution is closed. And as you remarked in your intervention, that she said, this is our university. No, it's not your university. So that means that when you think that you owe something, you do not allow the others to participate. That participation is also an exercise of rules, legal rules, because the main thoughts about, or the main characteristics about the property law is, or the property right, sorry, is that you exclude others from the uses of something. So in the end, participation has a direct conceptual framing with conceptual model framing with the participation. Participation, you exclude the others to participate, and the property, you exclude the others from the usage. So non-participation and non-property or property, they participate in the, or they share in common this thing, that is, do not allow the others to whatever participate or to use. So that means that the mental framework is exactly the same. And regarding what you said, I think that's also very, very interesting. But I think that there are also some other things that are very, very important. For example, when Linus Torvalds created Linux, he said, I'm not going to go against Windows, I don't mind, I'm just going to do my job. And then if Windows falls, if Microsoft falls, it's because of other things. It's not in my mind to make Windows or to make Microsoft fall. It is something that perhaps is going to be a side effect and it's going to happen. Okay, coming back to the commons, what happens with the rules? Okay, we can put a perfect and marvelous open science and open access system. But the thing is that if the teachers, in order to accrue their points, and professors, I mean, not teachers, in order to accrue the points that they need for making this academic career, the places where you have to publish, even though there exists a whole and a huge open access world, the only ones that are going to be credited and the other ones that are going to be enough in order to give you this tiny point that you need for your CV in order to progress in the academic career are, for example, Editorial Aranzadi in Spain, which is Thomson Reuters. Then what is open access for? Yeah, open access is for sharing knowledge, but then your professional career, you're only going to be able to do it through participation in models that are property models, proprietary models, which not only they say, I'm not going to pay you, it is that if you want to publish in Aranzadi, in Thomson Aranzadi, that is in Thomson Reuters, you have to pay. So in the end, we can make a list of where does an academic have to publish in order to obtain the credits necessary to maintain his career, and this is translatable into money, into an amount. And it's hundreds of thousands of millions in the world. So that is a side effect, and we can have a perfect common system, but if the side effect is that all the virtues that the system is going to give you as whatever are only going to be credited outside the system, then we have a problem. And it's not a problem then with regulating the commons. It's not then a problem with the appropriation or the enclosures of the commons. It is a problem on how are all other rules that are outside the commons, which we also have to stand against them. That is why in our conversation I said that what we need is a common lobby in Brussels. For example, in the open science paper there are plenty of concepts which come from the commons, but there was nobody there to say, look, this comes from here, this comes from there, and this is the framework, the reference framework that you have used, and you are not saying it because they are just like ideas that go around. But in the end, they have been already studied, they have been already shared, and that's something that we have also to go into. We have to go into this deep knowledge that we already have, but it's not. And the institutions, the political institutions, they are using these terms without knowing what they are saying. But they are using them because in the end, it's common sense.
Yes, we were talking about this morning, about the appropriation, you could say, of the commons discourse by political parties in Spain.
Okay.
You also found it problematic, as I recall.
I wanted to connect a bit with what Javier was saying, but I will come back with how I find problematic the appropriation of commons discourse by the political parties. So we have been working in this problem. We have a project called Decentralized Science, which aims to tackle actually this problem, like open access, give free access to science. However, because the infrastructure owners of science publications remain the same, they change their business model from charging readers to charging authors. And these owners are the publishers. However, in the university, they value our contributions by the journals we publish in. And journals are not strongly coupled with publishers. And we can try to bring them towards a decentralized, non-enclosable infrastructure. We want to provide blockchain and other decentralized tools for journals that are credited in their current system to come to a cheaper and not commercial infrastructure. So you can hack the system while there are incentives to still publish in journals that have this index. You can try to move the infrastructure away from the centralizing powers of, for instance, publishers. We are exploring how this may work. And coming back to the appropriation of the commons discourse, I think what Javier said is really interesting. We should have a saying of, no, this is the perspective of the commons and we want this to happen this way, or this is not the same as having political parties claiming to be the political parties of the commons, doing just politics that are a bit more human, a bit more participatory, but are still hierarchical, are not communitarian, are not going away from market-based reasoning. That is not the commons, and I think it's really harmful to use commons for something that is not commons, because then we lose the perspective. If commons is a way of organizing beyond market and state, and some actors of the state say, okay, commons is just a more human way of state actors like political parties, the commons loses a bit the revolutionary potential. So yes, we have to speak from the commons, we have to have lobbies, but we don't have to allow that interested actors takes our discourse and say they are doing commons while they are not, open or communitarian or going away from market perspectives. I don't know if the table agrees or I have a strong opinion on that, so I know that there is a lot of people working from really good points of view, trying to bring some commons to the political parties, although I think they are doing some harm while they are doing what they believe is the best. They are mixing a bit what is commons and what is not in the collective minds. Now it's more difficult to imagine what is a commons than some years ago, probably.
So then your point of departure is that there is like a right way to approach the commons from, and like so there's like a real way of commoning, and there's the appropriated ways.
I believe it's a way that is radically different to market-based and hierarchically based organization. And if we don't acknowledge that, we are losing part of its power. That's it. I don't think there is a right way of commoning. I just think that commoning with a market-based mind is not commoning, probably. It's doing something else. It's doing a market that is a bit more human. Or
Yes, I do agree with you, but I think that we have to be very careful about certain things. First of all, the discourse of we, the commoners. No, so we are not any kind of elite, and we are not the representatives of nothing. Okay, so in the end, we cannot say, oh, we, the commoners. So we are going to show the world in the laboratory of the Comunes in Madrid. We're going to show the world how this has to be done. No, because this is some kind of, it's like to say, no, I'm going to tell you what the beauty is. Well, it's not that way. So we have to make that very, very clear. And the second thing is that, okay, we live in a world, so we have to know perfectly how the other things work. We have to know perfectly how the market works, and we have to know perfectly how the state works. So in the end, it is just a matter of knowing that there are perspectives where what things are going to work perfectly is going to be much better in the market. Other things, what are they going to be perfectly designed and they are going to be carried on are through public inspiration activities or bill setting it up, and the other things are the ones that are the commons. So this functioning between the three of them, it is absolutely. I think that the question is how should we balance all the organizations, all the goods, all the access to products, all the access to services, all the access to culture when it comes to the commons, the public and the private. And I think that Antonio Lafuente always made a good example about this, and he said, okay, internet or Wikipedia doesn't work without the ensemblage, okay, which is a wording by Bruno Latour, of the public, the private and the commons. Because in Wikipedia what we do have is, we've got the commons, that is the content, we've got the digital commons, we've got also the commons, that is the software, but we've got public telecoms cables which have been set up by institution or by companies, and then we've got also Intel, which is the one, which is the core of the computer. So in the end it's the assemblage between these three components, public, private and commons, which in the end is providing the commons the opportunity to exist. If we did not have this public and private intervention, the digital intervention, the digital commons would have no way to, there were no basis in order to appear. So I think that it's very, very interesting how what we have to think is not on, of course we have to know that they are invading, everyone is invading the place of the other, but we have to know what is the balance and how can we create a society where the three have their functions and the three have a function, and in the end they lead to a better democracy, a better sharing the common goods or the goods, a better understanding how university should be, because in the end what happened in the university, and this is happening also in the Faculty of Philosophy of Madrid, is that, okay, there are certain people who do not agree on how this is working. So what are the points that are dysfunctional, which are non-functional? And well, how can we work in order to change this? And about the appropriation of the terms and the concepts, we have a very good example. For example, the concept hacker. What happens in the 60s and the 70s when this term was coined in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology? That, okay, they were the people who were creators, and here came the crackers who were the bad guys. But nowadays, when you say hacker, everybody is speaking about the bad guys. So the semantic field has been absolutely invaded by the bad part of the term. Who is responsible for this? Okay, the same ones who are just now speaking about fake news. Okay, now they say, oh, we've got a problem with fake news. Oh, no, you had a problem with yourselves. You know, media, okay, in the world is also some kind of poisonous way of managing reality and building reality. So in the end, what do we need in order to avoid, or in order to tell very clearly what do we understand by certain concepts? Because now we have to speak about ethical hackers. Because if you are in a conference and you say hacker, then they say, no, I participated in a hacker group from 2003 until 2007. And they say, well, you were between criminals. No, I was not.
So you have to legitimize what you're doing.
Yeah, that's it. So in the end, the terms they change. So what we have to do is then we have to push into, and of course we're going to spend certain time in order to put in clear what we are speaking about. And that's something that we cannot fight against it, because it's going to be managed by journalists and Twitter and Facebook and all this crappy corporations that we have over there that are managing our reality.
We have many problems with semantic, because we work in a biology field, and when you talk about biohacking, people, so the fear is real. People think we're going to make a super bacteria and the human
release
brain.
it, and
And our main objective is to share the knowledge with the people, so we all understand what we are doing. So they are not afraid of biology, because we think the main cause with this fear is the little knowledge people have about biology. So we struggle a lot with the semantic field about biohacking.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I think, if I recall correctly, Gilles Deleuze was the one who said that we need to create new terms in order to avoid the associations with the old language. So then my question would be, how can you retain the integrity of a term? Is it even possible? I don't know. And what is the revolutionary potential of using old terms? So for example, the term hacker, is it so much associated with certain connotations that it needs to be reinvented with a new term? Or is there a possibility to fight for the semantic field of the one? Yeah, that's my question. Yeah.
I think you can invent the old word, but you need to explain all the people how it now means, and that's a really difficult task. So I'm not sure, but the more people know how we want the word to mean now, the less people will think about the old meaning. I think you have to educate the people.
So you mean that there's also a danger in using a new term, that it's inaccessible, people won't understand, and it become elitist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they take our terms is a little bit of a victory, and it also allow us to explain. When I explain, okay, I don't call myself a hacker, but I say my friend is a hacker. Oh, so he cracks computer. No, he's really creative in what he does, and he always pushes forward the limits of the systems, either computers or others. So, and there is an opportunity of learning this culture of hackers in this dialogue that we create, by saying, no, hacker doesn't mean that. This is what the media wants hacker to mean. Or commons doesn't mean this. This is what some political parties want the commons to be associated with. Yeah. When I speak about commons, I speak about this, this, and this. So this appropriation of others of our terms give us the opportunity to explain our terms in contrast to what we are not referring to. I don't know if we are going to win or lose, but at least it's funny to explain what hacker means in my mind and give interesting things to speak about. Yeah. I don't think we can create new terms in the speed they can appropriate them. As soon as we are cool, they are going to take or going to attack our terms. So we have to be playful about it.
Yes.
Sorry, but I don't think that terms are from nobody. So I cannot say our terms or your terms or the other terms.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that terms are the way that we use in order to communicate. So they also give us a bridge in order to mediate between worlds. So if we have two people or two social classes, because in the end there are always social classes and social struggles here, why then these kind of terms are used by certain political ideology and not by the other, and how those two political ideologies normally are separated into different social social worlds. I think that Catalonia example has been marvelous in the sense of explaining who voted who. That is to say, the part that is urban part voted one part and the other part voted the other part. So that is to say that now they are speaking about Tabarnia and they are speaking about Tractorlandia, which is quite significant. I'm not going to say if I do agree or not, but I think that it is quite significant that that happened. Okay, so when we speak about terms, I think that the exercise of explaining a term has a twofold. First of all, okay, terms, as Frederick Jameson said, is that postmodernism what always does is makes new significances. That is to say, if we don't make new significances, we are not going to be able to sell something that was old again. So what we're going to do is we're going to coin a new term to designate, as you said, old things, which are exactly the same, and then we're going to be able to sell it. We don't speak about, no longer we do not speak about press manipulation. Now we speak about fake news. And then the European Commission, then they had this, this call for high expert groups on fake news, which means that Frederick Jameson was right. Okay, here comes a new economic activity that is attached to changing terms. But never they made this manipulation commission, okay, in order to analyze how media manipulates the reality, which they have been doing for, well, since the very conception of what media are. So the thing is that when we have these terms, okay, I think that it's a good exercise to, again, show what these terms, the significance of these terms, and this allows us to make communications, allows us to meet people, and allows us, well, and it's the end, is the exercise that we do always when we transmit culture or we transmit knowledge. This four model that is, okay, we've got the tacit knowledge, and in this tacit knowledge we always think about what is, more or less, what is the meaning of something, and when we put this knowledge into public is where we share it and we discuss it. So again, then it's going to be remodeled, and then this is going to be used again for the input for the new circle. The circle is the Nonaka circle, or the Polanyi, based on the Polanyi ideas, which what they do is, okay, we need this reframing and reconception of terms in order to continue. So at the same time it's bad, but at the same time it's good, because if it wasn't good, then we would not have the, if it wasn't only bad, we would not have the, or the possibility to explain that, okay, look, cracker and hacker. So having this tension is what allows us also to survive, in order to explain what we are doing, where are we going, what are the moral values under the semantic concepts that we are using, what are the fields, how are we categorizing the reality in order to follow certain vectors where we want to go, and then project the edges of the discourse that we are making, etc. So I think that's something that we cannot fight against it, but we have to live in it. It is just like when they try to make a culture definition and they say, well, don't make a cultural definition, think that we are living culturally. Okay, so we are living semantically. And living semantically means that we are always going to be in this kind of practice. And again, what are universities for? Okay, we have a person who enters into university 4 years later, 5 years later, at least they will have 200, 300, 400 new concepts. And every concept is going to open a wide umbrella of semantic or specific meanings. When you go into university, you do not know what is a mortgage, I mean in law, but when you are out of university, you've studied mortgage, then you know the huge mortgage, what is underneath the mortgage thing. And I think that university is that. Okay, for me, for my students, what I tell them is the most important thing that I would love you going out of this 4 months is that you know 40 new concepts and you know them perfectly. So I think that that is what we have to do. We have to keep on going.
And then how can we incorporate this transformative potential of language? Because I completely agree with you that new concepts can also create new realities or enrich existing realities. How can we incorporate this power into our governance structures?
Well, there is this Jan Searle in his last book, And what he defends is that, and I think that he makes this summary in a very appropriate way. What he says is, for example, this glass is going to exist. It doesn't matter if we use language or not. It is going to exist. Snowed mountain is going to exist. But if we want marriage, or we want a mortgage, or we want a commons, then what we have to do is we need language.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's, in the end, it's a linguistic aspect, and it is a semantic problem where we are always facing, and we experience it in the normal daily. Thank you, Sonia. Don't know what you did, but it
Magic touch.
it's working. So, and I think that it is thinking, rethinking, speaking about and in the end, it's a matter of education and communication. It's always that way, I think. And I think that these institutions that we want to create, or we want to explain, or want to study, in the end, is using language the best as possible,
Yeah.
I think.
Because to take an example, at the University of Amsterdam we have elections, but the how do you say, the percentage of the people that come to vote is so incredibly low, and I think it also has to do with the term of the concept of democracy, that for many young people it feels outdated. You know, it feels as if we need a new way of approaching maybe the same old ideas. So then how can we create a new term without losing the richness and the history of the old term? And I think the word común is a good example that was like rediscovered in the laboratorio and used to refer to a concept that was incredibly old but at the same time needed reinvention. Yeah.
I think that their experience can be very interesting for that. How do you face normal days? How do you face this challenge? How do you battle against that? Because you are in the edge.
Yeah.
Biohackers are in the edge.
Yeah. We jump the leaders of the university and we go directly to the professors, or not to the leaders, you know, and not tell to the leaders the things we are doing, just with the normal people of the university. This is our way. We need some equipment of the laboratory. We repair the laboratory equipment of the universities, but the problem with the equipment of the universities is that the university can't give, because have the number and have the registry, but the equipment are broken and are not using. They are not using it. So it's ridiculous because they have a lot of trash that we can repair, but because the bureaucratic issues, they cannot give us.
And because you're the biohackers, maybe.
Yeah.
And not something
no, because
more official.
These people understand what we are doing. You know, they are biologists, and how we solve it? We go directly to the professors and not tell the leaders or the people that have the bureaucratic roles in the university. And the professors give us the equipment. No, we have problems. But I don't know. I don't think that can be the solution for everything.
What would be your ideal world?
Wow, that's a big question.
I don't know. It's a good question.
So, I don't know, about the participation, I think the strategy of just find your paths and do what you want to do is a clever way to do it. And in the university, for instance, in Madrid, we have hundreds of thousands of people in Universidad Complutense de Madrid. It's a huge institution. And we have elections as well with really low participation of the students. We also did occupations and we tripled or get like 3 to 5 more participation in our referendum to stop the mercantilization of the university with Bologna process and so on. and they said, oh, but so few people voted, and yeah, probably we got 5 times more. So it's not about participation, it's more about being part of it, and people, I think the students don't vote because they don't feel the university is theirs, or they don't feel that what they will say matters. They will probably vote more in an association in the university that helps them. Yeah, so they will be willing to participate in associations or in experiences that they participate, that they create community around. So in order to create governance of something, or to want to participate in the governance of something, you have to feel it yours. And I think there are ways of things that are not yours, like the university is not by law yours, to make it yours. Like when you occupy a building and you open it to the public, you're making it yours. Either it puts that in a legal paper or not. You are hacking the ownership and the property of the. So there are some practices that I think people participated more in the universities in Madrid and students when we were sleeping in these buildings at night, that when they opened elections, because they had a saying, they were building something. If students were building their things in the university, they will be willing to participate, and we will not be participating in elections that are boring and that matters to hundreds of thousands of people, but in elections or in the democratic process that matters for our communities. I don't know if this brings a little bit of light or more problems, but I don't vote in the university. I voted in the assemblies that we did in the university.
I think, cambiando el tema, pero I think you are touching, and you too, in this conversation are touching a fundamental thing. ¿Cómo se dice el elefante en la sala? No sé.
The elephant in the room, yes.
The elephant in the room is the same in English. That is the participation. When you are talking about the papers and all these things, I don't know in other fields, but in biology the most important public paper is +1. And the problem is with +1 because you have talked about the readers and the authors, but are the third role in these papers that are the reviewers. And this is normally a voluntary job, and this is the principal, a good point in all of this field is that I think always we are going to need voluntary jobs. You know, the people, get people involved, you know, just for
I mean, we do as a community our jobs.
Yeah, but the problem is how, I think the main issue is how to get these people involved. You know, how to inspire these people is the biggest problem I see in all of these. In our associations, or the job are voluntary, and our principal problem is how to inspire the people to make the job voluntary, not to profit in.
To engage people, because all
engage.
these ideas are like very attractive for a couple of days, like, oh, yeah, but you need to engage people to the cause. So because we need like a continuous work.
I think
to
if you
accomplish things.
Yeah, you know.
We studied that.
I said cause, but
we studied that issue of participation in commons-based reproduction communities, and we didn't solve it. That's why we are still.
Maybe the only solution we need is just to get more people involved in democracy.
Yes.
I think that I don't know, but in so many problems, the main solution is to get people involved.
Yeah, but there is a tension. Usually in communities that build commons, the participation is uneven, really uneven. You have a power law of the distribution of work. So you have a really small group of people, maybe you two and another person, doing more than half of the work. Then you have 10 more times, probably, people that have volunteered once, 2 volunteer 3 times, 4, but they don't assume the actual responsibilities of the community to succeed or to to live.
And I think
And then there is a 90%, a white majority that only uses, for instance, Wikipedia or only sees what you do and do not participate. And there are tensions because the people who see what you do, they think, they value what you do and they think you're doing cool things, but they don't know how to start participating. You are really loaded with a lot of work, usually the core members, and you don't trust newcomers. So you say, okay, I know how to do this, and it will be more job to teach how to do it, so I will do it myself.
Yeah.
So there are tensions, and there are also things that comes together really well. There are people willing to participate, and there are people willing to give some job. We need to find bridges between people wanting to share their jobs and people wanting to give a hand and to develop their values or their abilities or whatever in the community. And we believe communities succeed because somehow they find these bridges, but that these bridges could be better. I don't know, open events, dinners, having the tasks for newcomers. This is something that have worked really well in open source software. You tag some of the tasks that are easy to solve as good for beginners. And you don't solve them just because they are easy. You let them there because they are easy, they are not critical, but you let them there in order to somebody to come and help you do it. And you say, hey, beginner, it's me who will help you go through this to fix this. I will help you getting involved in the community. You're not doing that because you need that bug to be solved by somebody else. You do that in order to include people. So yeah, the key part is participation, and it's really tricky. It's a tension between, all the hard work that have to be done and have to be done good, and all these newcomers that want to arrive and you still don't know if to trust or...
But is it even possible or desirable that 100% would participate?
I didn't say that.
No, I know, that's a question.
I believe, I believe it's a natural...
Yes, exactly.
It's natural that some people are really involved in their projects and others just participate with their passion a little bit of their time. I could not be participating in all the Commons project I use. No. I collaborate a bit in some, I lead some others. And that is natural. What we could try to do is to solve the issues of having people burning out, for instance, like working really too much for the community to succeed, or people struggling to find open communities that will welcome them and say, hey, you have a saying here. We want to hear what you want to say, and we want you to help us build this with your experience.
It's also a way of translating. So translating what must be done in a way that is accessible for them. Yeah,
of course, communities create a lot of terms and and people come to communities and they are scared because what are these people speaking about?
Yeah.
What is commons? What is hacker? Yeah. Why they think I'm not good enough because I'm not using these terms? I don't know. Of course, these terms also protects the community and creates an environment for them to collaborate and to understand each other. So it's it's a difficult balance. I think. In a way, it's already a balance that works, and it could be improved. Some of the tensions.
Yeah, it's also a problem that we struggle with in our commons, that we have a core group, and we are all, well, sometimes you're on the edge of, not burnt out maybe, but really like it's too much for us to bury. But then at one point you are so much integrated in the process, and you're such an essential, not essential, but such a part of the process that it's also difficult to welcome new people. So then there's a danger of becoming exclusionary and becoming like a closed circle instead of a half open circle. So how can
we the chosen ones?
Exactly, yeah.
That is very. First of all, it is a matter of listening. We always speak about speaking, but what about listening?
Yeah.
Again, so we have been focusing on discourses and speaking and telling our message, etc., etc. Yeah, but what about listening? And what about reading? What about reading the world? Do we read the world? Do we listen to the world? We only just try to say, oh, we read this, so we are privileged, and then we are going to tell you how things should be done because I know more about these things than you do. And then they look at us and say, well, yeah, and they just move a little, in a tiny piece, and all the castle is down. So you can win 2,000 cases in Spain, and you can lead the world linking system in intellectual property, and you can obtain the best resolutions. But then here comes the government and changes just one tiny piece of the huge law system, and then, well, you lose the rest of the other ones. So in the end, I think that we have to read much better the world, and we have to listen much more carefully. And then I think that it's also a problem not only of who is going to participate in our normal environments, but how do we participate in the other environments. And that is something that also has been just like something that other people, they just, oh no, I am pure, so I'm not going to be into this kind of contamination to go into certain places. No, I think that we have to do, and we have to explore that other realities. So it's not only the thing that we do participate in our groups, it is that, okay, can I learn from other ways of doing things? Can I learn from how politicians do? And can I learn how private universities work? Because there's a huge knowledge over there which can be used again for what we do. I remember there was one story that was really, really funny, and it was that it was in 2012, 2013, I can't remember when it was, but it was this Rodea al Congreso demonstration, which was people around the parliament in Spain, and they did not, and so the police were around the building, and they did not enter, nobody could enter. And then there was this notice about, this news about people saying, oh, we went to the Congress, and then we issued a file and in the registry. And everyone was, oh, amazing, how did they do it? They dressed with a tie and a suit. That's it. So it was as simple as that. Okay, so so it's not only if we have to participate, etc. No, okay. I think that the problem is, okay, we have in university teachers who are going to understand us because they are in the research model, and then we're going to have bureaucrats. Have we gone and have we spoken with the bureaucrats?
A lot of times.
Lots of times. And what is the problem? Have we gone over the ladder?
Yeah, the problem is not with bureaucrats. The bureaucrats only follow the rules that people
impose on them.
Yeah, impose them. You know, it's only people that do not make any argument or only follow the rules. The problem is that in the universities are rules too rigid. Is it in English? You know, rigid rules. Not the bureaucrats only follow these rules. The problem is in the base, and one of them is this one that I told you before. With the equipment, universities have a lot of trash equipment that the citizens can use it. We just repair them. But the rules are too rigid to give this to students, you know, and it's better to.
Yep. So why not going up the ladder?
Yeah, this is the other.
And in the end, I think that there are plenty of things that we do not do because we do not have time enough. It is just a matter of, okay, you've got your examination, I've got my job. When I finish, perhaps it's 11 o'clock in the evening, and then I have to go when I arrive home. 10 in the evening, 10:30, then I have to, for example, correct some exams or correct some works or whatever, and it's much better to watch Netflix. So Netflix in the end can be one of the most, the enemy of the revolution, okay? So, well, I'm speaking, of course, this is just some kind of joke, but in the end, the history of the entertainment has been done putting ourselves into home. Okay, so
but I don't think it's just a cause. I think it's also a symptom of the problem, because people are so much under such high levels of stress, and that they need to be for 1 hour, 2 hours a day, just like staring at something and not thinking at all.
Yeah, it's much better.
It's
marvelous.
Yeah.
And you can learn other languages. you put Spanish subtitles, and then you, okay, what language am I going to learn? Then you stay 2 years listening in that language, and in the end you will be able to understand something. So it's got also very, very good uses. But the thing is that, okay, in the end we go into how can we develop a strategy in order to rationalize or make a moral use of the resources, which in the end has been paid by all of us. Okay, if we taxpayers pay these resources, we should be able to use them in a more rational way or in a more moral way. And I make the two distinctions between rational can arrive to what can be counted, and moral is, of course, this non-countable ways of using things that we think that are based more in justice and etc. etc. Because one of the problems that I think that we have nowadays is this hyper-numerism, that is to say, everything must be numbered. You have this number of followers. You have this retweet was retweeted whatever times. So you are always measuring the impact, etc., etc. And sometimes what you have to think is, I'm not going to measure any more the impact. I don't want to go into the press, and the only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my 200 meters around me. What can I find there in my daily basis? So I'm going to go for that civil servant, and then I'm going to ask him, okay, what's the problem? Oh, you have to follow the rules. Okay, who did these rules? Oh, let's go. So let's make a study on how, and then study the problem, and of course, it's a matter of time, and you have to insist and insist and insist. And when you arrive with new solutions, as Linus Torvalds did, then here we've got an Android that has got a Linux inside. Who could have thought about this? Nobody. So the unexpected consequences are things that we have to, so what we have to do is we have to put the basic structure, and then things will happen, I think. If we do not put the basic structure, that is for sure that things are not going to happen. So we have to go on and speak and be friends. Being polite, friendly, and with good arguments, I think that's one of the best tools that you can always have. We don't have enemies. Nobody is our enemy. Even though they think that we are their enemies. You're not my enemy. I've got no enemies. Yeah, I know that people are my enemies, but it's not because I decided. It's because they have said, this is my enemy, because he is supporting certain aspects or rules or things that I do not agree with, and that they are going to challenge my monetary system or whatever. And normally it's an economic situation or a vanity situation. But I think that those things are the two things. But thinking about that, okay, and then I think that you always have ways to introduce the significances and also long-term discourses, because we've got this numerism system, and we've got also that everything has to have a feedback nowadays. This is not a sprint, this is a marathon. Been 2,500 years already discussing about democracy. What are we going to solve now? Participation, yes, perfect. But it's not something that we can just do for right now. It is something that is the line, okay?
Horizon.
Yeah, the horizon. It is the line that we have over there that we never are going to reach it. But that doesn't mean that we have to stop. It means that we still have to go. So it's just a matter of, well, enjoying. And it's a very nice walk, because you can find plenty of friends, plenty of ideas, plenty of good conversations, and sometimes if everything is done, you say, well, and what am I going to do now? You know? Okay, imagine that I live in an ideal world. Jesus Christ, so the only thing I can do is learn languages. Oh no.
It would be a disaster. You can only watch Netflix. Yeah. Yeah. So, but then I think this also connects to your point of view that the commons should be an alternative to the status quo, so that a horizon to which you can aspire to.
It's not that they should, is that we have these experiences that are commons-based, that shows that there are different ways of doing really valuable things like Wikipedia or Linux or many others that are not based in market or in state. So it's not that they should be like this. They are examples of other ways of organizing that that inspired the change. Because one of the things of any system that wins is that it tries to say it's the only system that is possible. And luckily we have many examples outside the capitalism and the system that works. And that works, okay, inside capitalism and within capitalism, like he said, like Javier said, but also could work outside capitalism. I don't know if Wikipedia could work, but there are many commons experiences that work outside capitalism. And so when they said, okay, what you propose doesn't work, you have many experiences to rely on and to say, no, look at these people, they are doing right. And they don't need to sell their things, or they don't need a boss to tell them what to do. So it's not that they should, but they are an alternative way of framing and organizing and producing. And I think it's really inspiring. Really, for me, it is really awesome how they build these huge things against the common sense of our system.
And of course, capitalism is a very globalized paradigm, way of thinking. So my question would be, what are the consequences if we try to upscale the paradigm of the commons? How can we keep the richness of the commons practices? So how can we upscale the commons paradigm without losing the richness of the commons practices? So not prototyping or unifying like the whole commons into one methodology. So this is how it's done, and
yeah, there are no easy recipes. So every community arrives to their better way of governing themselves until they arrive to a new and better one, and they change towards that. We have seen scaling the governance of communities that have millions of people, like Drupal communities, or tens of millions of people, like Wikipedia, to an extent that is really of big scale, right? And I believe some of the keys are to give autonomy to small groups to decide when and where they matter. So if I want to decide how Wikipedia articles about the Second World War have to be done, I can go into a small group of experts and to discuss whether we should follow the standards on wars or this is different. And everybody has a say, and this scales up to produce a commons that is of dimensions I cannot imagine, or we can speak about numbers, but you get lost in Wikipedia. So I think we can scale up governing other commons in the same way, giving autonomy for local communities to develop their rules, respecting their rules, and just federate, scale, try to communicate. There are no easy recipes. Just let the communities find their good scale and their good ways of interacting and communicating. And there will be struggles, of course, but hopefully we will find better governance tools that help us to embrace these tensions and to solve them. And I don't think there are easy recipes there. Sorry.
No, I was interrupting you. But at one point, aren't you going to need representative democracy then, if you really upscale it to a society level, the commons?
Wikipedia has representatives, but Wikipedia is a system that can be forked. So if you don't like that, you can propose an alternative way. It will be really costly, but it will be challenged. We could try to have a alternative Wikipedia that is not managed with representatives, but it works so far. I think every community will find their best ways. And representative democracy doesn't have to be the way we see it now. It doesn't have to be a person or a party for 4 years. It could be more like a liquid democracy where I delegate my vote to this party in ecology and this person in law, or even more complex systems like, okay, only if these 3 people agree, I will delegate my vote to them on ecology. So we can scale up things with technology. Some things are good to be governed by delegates. Some others we may find better solutions.
In the end, I think that we spoke about this the day that we made, and I think it's okay. We have to take very clear that the problem of the direct democracy is an epistemological problem, that is to say, a knowledge problem. And it is fantastic because between the moment that we spoke and today happened something that demonstrated, or at least validated this opinion, which is that they said, now YouTube is going to look at Wikipedia in order to ascertain if something is fake news or not. Okay, so in the end, the example that was, and Wikipedia is a perfect tool for managing the direct democracy, that is to say, to go against this epistemological problem, then has been validated by this, what appeared, no? Okay, so we've got direct democracy. The problem with direct democracy, as Ivan Sanchez says, is, from OpenStreetMaps says, is, okay, I don't know if I'm going to do this high-speed train to Madrid, from Madrid to Seville, if I have to do tunnels or I have to build bridges. I do not have that knowledge. Speaking about biohackers, I do not have that knowledge. I have no idea. So I have to trust those people. So then the problem with direct democracy is an epistemological problem. And when we transform it into representative democracy, that is to say, I have to trust those people, you are going the ones who are going to lead my opinion in this because you are the ones who I know, then it is not an epistemological problem. It is a trust problem. So democracy, then, we have two problems there. One that attaches, or that is that concerns direct democracy, which is epistemological, that is knowledge. So we need technology in order to advance knowledge. In the traditional sense of the advancement of knowledge from Bacon. And in the second, what we need is systems of control. Technology for controlling people. So when we arrive to the representative democracy, the problem is trust, and then it is a problem with, okay, you have my vote, but what are you going to do with it? So how can I control them, and how can we establish systems, software systems, where I can audit what they say, and of course, they will always have this kind of superior way of cheating, we could say, because I have no knowledge. So I think that those two things, we have to take them into account very seriously if we want to introduce, or when we are introducing technology into the world. We have seen what's happening nowadays with the global scale manipulation of news. Okay, that is what it's called by fake news. And in the end, that is also an epistemological problem. And we always think that, oh, that is happening to other people. No, that is also happening to me. Because then why do we drink Coca-Cola? Which is such a poisonous thing, for example. So when we go to what we eat, there is where we can find how we have been affected by plenty of marketing systems, and then our way of eating is never going to be, or smoking or drinking is never something that's so we are also victims. So it's not something that happens to other people. That affects us at least 3 days 3 times a day. So then what do we need? So in the end, again, it's the same problem as philosophy has addressed since 2,500 years ago. It's knowledge. In the end, it's knowledge. It's a problem of knowledge.
But that's, yeah, because what really frightens me is that sometimes people, because you also started by saying this, right, that usually the problem is that people don't have the knowledge, that they're not educated, and once you educate them, they will care or they will participate. But I'm not so sure, actually. Unfortunately, I think that there are many people who do perfectly know that their clothes are made in terrible factories in Bangladesh, or that their meat comes from a terrible slaughterhouse in which animals are treated in very cruel ways. But they, I don't know if they don't care. It's hard for me to believe, actually. But this is the same. Maybe it's because it's on a very abstract level, that it's such a huge problem and it's so entangled in their way of living that it would take such a big effort to disentangle it. But what really strikes me as well is that at the University of Amsterdam, so many people there are so busy. You know, they have 5 jobs, and they do resume building. You know, they have internships, and they do this and they do that, and they do the honors program, and la 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 la. But then they have no idea about their university. You know, they have no idea how it functions, how the system works, what the problems are. So they're not engaged in their own habitat, you know, in their own direct environment in which they spend most of their time. So of course this is not just a problem of the university, this happens in so many other places as well. So then how can we, how to change this, how to make the translation from the Commons to their perspective in such a way that it will disentangle some of this this passiveness, you could call it maybe. Because it's not as if they are lazy, you know, not at all. They are incredibly busy people, but their focus, their urgency is not in this place.
I have a friend from an association near here, Makerspace Madrid, and they have the same. They have talked a lot of this issue, and the vision, the view that he have about all this thing, all this field is like you need to. You are competing with the people time without Facebook, all the jobs, and you must view all of this like a startup like Facebook. You are going to compete for the people time with all of other things in their lives. I don't have this view, but I think it's I don't know. You have to get in mind that you are competing with all of the stuff. Yeah. What are you going to give to this person? You know?
And then that's another question. Do you make use of these channels of communication in order to communicate the idea of the Commons or Commoning initiatives? Well, we do make use. We have a Facebook community. It's like our, but this is also it's a difficult topic. Should you make use of this infrastructure, or should you make use of another infrastructure? But then you lose a big part of the. Then you lose a significant part of your target group. Target group's attention. So this is a dilemma. How.
Our solution is to use all of them.
To use what? Sorry.
All of them.
All of them.
It's a lot of time, but I think it's the only way.
How has marketing done? How has marketing done? Because that question is marketing.
Yeah.
So then we have to learn from.
Yes, because that's what we also often hear. You need to sell what you're doing. You need to, this is of course market vocabulary. But then there is also, we hate it, but there's also a truth to it, or truth that in a sense they are right, that you need to, there's no other way, it almost seems, but it's, you don't want to,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So that's why the problem with the Commons is that it has there are two very, very important departments that it doesn't have. The first one is the marketing department. There is no commercial department, and the second one is that there is no corruption department. We do not do marketing, and we do not bribe, and that is a problem.
So we need to learn how to bribe.
Well, the thing is, could we bribe in a legitimate way?
Yes.
So what would be the prices for that bribing? That is to say, of course, it's not going to give money, but the thing is that, and of course it's not going to bribe because it's not going to enter into the semantic field of what a bribe is. But the thing is that we have no corruption department. Here comes Microsoft and says to the civil servant, oh, here what you can do is you can use Windows servers because they are much better than Linux servers, etc., etc. We do not have that department. We do not have, and if you do this, then we are going to take your family to a congress, and then you're going to have certain earnings, which is the drug business doing absolutely the whole day. The Commons does not have that department. The corruption department does not exist. And the second, the commercial department, is we with our activity and that we are very happy doing things. So it's our illusion and our activity what is facing what the commercial department should be.
Yes.
So as we do not have those departments, the thing is, how can we do things with one hand in our back? in the end.
I think we have to wrap it up. Thank you very much for participating here. I thought it was very interesting. I hope you also got something out of it. So if you want to have a drink afterwards, I would be happy to continue the conversation. So,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bueno, como van a montar ahora, no se van a quedar con todo esto en marcha, porque van a montar una vez.
I have a strong opinion on that as well. I do not use any private tools, and I really believe it's overrated. You want this meaningful relationship and meaningful
bubbles, of course.
Yeah. You want to create meaningful communities, and there is this fear, this
Tenemos que irnos, que tenemos el coche.
And then I was completely not aware of these topics. And now I almost feel a bit, say, unethical, or like I'm a bit ashamed, especially here in Media Lab when I come with my Apple, you know. Like,
Come on.
no, but it's, I think if you have to be consequent in the way in which you... it's another discussion, you know, because...
I'm happy to help you some free tools.
Oh, yeah, that would be wonderful. But it's also...
La cosa es que yo creo que el problema de esto es que tienes el micrófono enfocado al altavoz. Entonces, cuando aumenta el sonido aquí, sale más fuerte, vuelve a entrar, sale más fuerte. Y es una paradoja. Es una paradoja.
Yeah, how do you with Romani? How she sit to the public?
Like this.
Why? Let me push
She sits like this.
the sound.
Let's put this in forward.
Yeah, or perhaps you could have just switched.